Spring, 918. Dunnottar there is to be a meeting, Domhnall told Osrith, repeating his first casual, off-hand statement, a hint of caution behind it now. Osrith had stopped walking and was now looking south, over the Forth and beyond, to a spot she could not see, by the wall. Domhnall clarified, then added, because it was too early in the morning for the argument he felt was coming, just speak to Constantine. He spoke of it at the feast last night. The feast I did not attend, Osrith said, smarting at the potential snub. What else am I to miss out on, Domhnall? When I was asked to stay away. Osrith, you were not asked to stay away, Domhnall told her, beginning their slow patrol along the northern bank of the river. Little Finan was calling for you, and Edra, who you must admit does a lot of the looking after as far as he is concerned, asked you to be with him. Osrith turned, and gave Domhnall a long look. He was right, and they both knew it. But she did not like it that he had pointed it out. You say I am not spending enough time with my son? Osrith asked, defensively. He was her best friend, but Domhnall could be too truthful with her sometimes. I spent the night beside him, and the night before last. Then she felt herself stiffen. Is this why Constantine has excluded me from the meeting? She asked, suddenly. But before Domhnall could answer, Osrith was already striding away. Domhnall, after a second of urgent thought, hurried after her. Osrith, he called, and when he put a hand on her shoulder, she moved her head, nudging the back of her hand over her face. He softened, and stroked his hand lightly over her shoulder. No, Domhnall, Osrith protested. I am fine. You. She raged through her teeth. I did not choose to be a warrior. Osrith went on. I did not wake up at Bibbenberg looking at swords and Norse ships and think, one day, I want to be a warrior for my uncle Elfric. I know, Domhnall tried to soothe. But Osrith turned and looked at her friend, anger, disappointment, injustice written on her face. I did not say you were a bad mother. I did not say you did not give young Finan enough of your time. And I go when he calls, I go even when he does not. Osrith went on. I organize for his lessons, his sword training. Edra lets him follow her around because it does her well with the Morma's sons. Osrith, Domhnall tried to calm her down, but her rage was getting more intense. No one tells a man who is a warrior he needs to be spending more time with his children, Osrith went on. No one excludes a warrior from a significant event because he hasn't spent enough hours bringing up his child. She looked at her friend. I mean, you spend years away from your son. Domhnall inhaled and looked across the Forth before looking back to Osrith. Edward of Wessex is going to be there, Domhnall told her, gravely. You know how he feels about that king, because of you. It was true, and again, Domhnall was the only one who knew how Constantine had treated her that night, when she was preparing to take Edra to see Bocca. Black hair, now grey, eyes as blue-bright as she remembered when he had raced back to the Ailch the night she had taken Edra to Winchester. Domhnall was every inch the king his father was. And there he was, taking the time to talk to her now. And she him, Domhnall had, on patrol, when they were far from Dunnottar, confided to Osrith how much he missed his mother Malmuir, who had died not long after Flansinna, and how much he wished she could see Neil again, a thoroughly upstanding UI Neil, which is rare. Domhnall had laughed through his sadness that day, who had married poor Gormlaith and were now living at Doncharda's generosity. No inch of a challenge to him for the northern throne. Were Osrith a man, they might be in an alehouse bitching over the king's decision and reminiscing about past days while getting very drunk. And as for little Il, he died. Osrith's face fell as she thought of Era, the servant girl who Mary had birthed when she found she could not cope with the blood and the fluid and the lives at stake. Oh, Domhnall, I am sorry, she told him, stepping close to him and planting a kiss on his cheek, regretting her complaints to Domhnall at the supposed slight. She did not know whether Constantine wished her not to travel there. But I am going anyway, she told him, pulling away, resolve in her voice. Even if it's against Constantine's instructions. She remembered the letter. Finan wanted to meet her. Though it had long ago burned it to ashes, his words were in her mind, still. Don't, Osrith, Domhnall told her. Norse are in the area. Ragnall has claimed land by the Lune River and is pushing ever more towards Cumbraland and into Northumbria again. I don't believe he wishes to treat with Ethelfled and Edward, or Sigtryg either, but to stake his claim that Alba goes all the way to the wall. Osrith mused. He needs to be there, have a presence. It all made sense. What didn't was not including Osrith. I am sorry about your son, Osrith said, as they headed towards the undulating terrain in the east. It was the easiest part to defend, being open ground, and she examined the land as if it held 1,000 of finely hairs Norse. But she felt that Domhnall was not keeping pace with her. She turned, and saw him fixed to the spot, staring at her. This is not about Hill, he told her. I did not love the girl. He shook his head. But then, he turned his head in defiance as Osrith neared. You did not want to fight again, he reminded her, sharply. You wanted to become a farmer. What has changed, Osrit? He glanced to her hip. A strange-shaped plowshare you have in your scabbard, Card. Stop, she declared. Why? The argument must have been brewing for some time between them. Domhnall's instinct was spot in, Osrith sensed. What has changed that you wish to see the Ullaid bastard now? Where is Sained in all of this? Where is young Finan Dash? He broke off, and looked at her with a twinkle in his eye. That's it, is it? He asked. You and that bastard? Osrith glanced away, and looked at the moss-strewn rocks that ranged from the river up into the highland to the north. Many hues of lichen took their places beside them. She had never noticed the beauty of the landscape before, and now, being caught out by her best friend made her examine them intently. It must be some love ye hold for him, Osrit, even after ye know what he and that bastard brother of his did to ye, and the other women that came into their lives. Osrith felt a hand on her shoulder, and she turned to Domhnall, guilt decorating her features. He wrote to me, Osrith told him. He wants to meet me. But Domhnall shook his head and it was his turn to look away. How you can still love him, Osrit, after everything, he said. I don't, she shot back. I don't love him. I don't even know what I saw in him, except she was alone in Winchester, away from everyone she had known, looking for a brother who, to Osrith, was going to be as honorable and faithful as Domhnall's warriors, with whom she had spent those years in her youth living with, growing up with. As her ideal came apart, Finan was there, black-haired, pale-eyed, like the Gales she had known. It was his quick wit and his link to Aryan which had made her interested, and it was an interest, if she admitted it, that drew to attraction, and then love. If Finan never did what he said he would do, come north to find her, would she flee with him? They had no wealth, no land. She would be forsaking Alba if she did that. There would be no way back, and he would be forsaking Utad. I want to take my son to see his father, Osrith admitted. Street Cuthbert's Cove is at Bibbenberg, and I cannot stop you, Domhnall told her, flatly. Well, I could tell Constantine all you've told me, and even then, he cannot stop you, if you truly wish to go, after he's beaten you. Osrith shivered. But think, Card, Domhnall continued, think about everyone's lives. Think about young Finan, how this will affect him. Because if you leave, you know you will not come back. Then it was Domhnall's fear. He would lose her as a friend, Constantine would be dishonored. Truly, would Finan leave Utad's side? And then there was Sained. She loved Sained, she truly did. Osrith wanted to make a future for them all, and she felt protected in his company. She felt like she did not have to fight to prove the point that she was not someone's sister, someone's daughter or niece or mother. In Sained's company, she could be Osrith, and she could farm and do an honest day's work for the future yield of crops, of food, to support the people of Berwick whose living depended on the land. It was a future worth having. But she needed to close the door with Finan, and Osrith knew she must do that by taking young Finan to see him. What better opportunity than at a place where many people were to witness her motives? With Domhnall beside her to remind her of her own resolve. It would be the end of my time with him, Osrith told Domhnall. It would be the closing of the door. I wish young Finan to see his father, and I wish that to be the end of my association with him. My future is with Sained, though it will be hard to lay down my sword. And young Finan, she broke off and looked in the direction of the tower. I worry at his reluctance to learn swordcraft. He needs to know the basics, and yet his love is with words and language. He knows so many. Like you, Osrit, Domhnall reminded her. You pick up languages like a Briton picks up oak wood. Not all boys become warriors. Some become scholars. He smiled at her, and put a hand on her shoulder. Maybe he wishes to become a monk. Maybe he will preach the word to the Norse and die in his bed. Saint Finan? Osrith wondered, and a smile broke on the shore of her face, which caused Domhnall to smile, and then laugh, and then they were both laughing for no other reason than they were friends, in whose confidences they put secrets in which they trusted no one else. Come on, Domhnall said to her, beginning to walk at pace, on the lower path that led to Dunnottar. What? You won't be happy until you know. He nodded towards the fortress. Go and find Constantine and make him tell you whether he intends to include you or not. 88,888,888. But it was Edra Osrith met before she found Constantine, and she confided in her daughter that Constantine had talked about taking an army south. The men are back from Bibbenberg, Osrith continued, as she abandoned her search for Constantine and instead headed to the tower room, where young Finan was still asleep. 2 or 3 times a year Constantine sent men to honor his agreement from Weir. And, apart from the one attempt nearly 4 years ago by Utad to take the fortress, there had been little trouble at all from one cousin to another. He's abed at this hour? Osrith asked Edra. Mater, he barely slept because of you leaving, and cannot sleep properly even now. And you are going away with Ather? Osrith stopped. She hadn't said that to Edra, but it was telling that the girl had supposed that. Edra, I am never leaving him again. If I have to go I will be taking him with me. She sighed, and touched her daughter's red golden head gently. I hated leaving you, but you had Ather, and he had commanded me. It hurt me to leave you all, Osrith added. I have avoided leaving these past years, if you have noticed. I have, Mater, Edra said, looking up through Osrith's arms and giving her the wide, ghost-like smile of her real mother, Thyra Ragnar's daughter. And I have also noticed your face when the army marches south, when it goes as it does to Bibbenberg. And the speaks your real father, Osrith thought, Father Becker, whose insight was like a hot knife through butter. But it was a humane instinct, that knew, underneath it all, the sinner was human, and treated them with respect where other priests, other kings, other bishops would not. Bibbenberg is tricky, and you know it, Osrith told her, taking Edra's hands in hers. I gave you my real name because I never wanted to be involved in that place again, but I wanted the name of my ancestors to live on. I know you call yourself a different name, just as I do, Osrith added, proving, for once, to be as insightful as her daughter, Thyroengen Korstin. Edra Thyroengen Korstin, she told Osrith, I could never forget my real name, or you. But I want to marry Anleth, she told her. For Ather, for myself. To have a real life, a real future, like you want with Sainid. To pay back Ather for everything he has done since you brought me here. Osrith smiled at the idealization of life made real by her daughter's words. Was she any better than Edra at her age? She thought Utad was going to be her salvation, that she would turn up to his house and tell him she was his sister, and he would open his arms and tell her all was well and they would be one big happy family. Life had not been like that, of course, but the young knew nothing of life, and that was, on reflection, good for them. Believe me, Osrith told her. I have brought him more wealth in leather bags and given more blood in service to Constantine than you ever need to pay yourself. She kissed Edra on the forehead. Pay it forward, to your own family, to Anleth and your own children and the lives you make for yourself. Do not make my mistakes and expect other people to help you. Because Osrith had chosen not to see Ella when she was pregnant with young Finan and, as predicted, a child had become a complication, a weight tying her down. Not that she could ever say those words to anyone, nor did she mean them. But her son tied her to Dunnottar, made it so she chose not for the sake of dynasty or land or country or oath, but for blood. Mothers made those choices while it didn't happen for fathers. It was why Ethelfled had lost her temper with Osrith. The Lady of the Mersons would be regretting that, Osrith knew, to reveal her desire that she wanted Elflad protected. Osrith realized then that it was only Alba that she truly cared about. Alba, which had welcomed her, accepted her. It had nurtured her and been her refuge. Uthed, Osrith realized then, must have felt the same about the Danes because the Danish family who had taken him had raised him and treated him with respect. And she knew then that she didn't care about Bibbenberg anymore. She didn't care which of her brothers took the fortress that had been her home, and while she loved Wigger, and respected that he was her brother, neither he nor Uthed were her family. But Dakean and Alba, other people. Edra sat back and looked at her mother. I am not other people, Mater. I did not look after Fine and Beak out of duty, or anything like that. As you said, Athair compelled you to leave. He is my brother. It was an honor to be beside him. And Osrith pulled Edra close to her, needing the embrace just as Edra used to need the embrace when she was younger. She had a brother, whom she loved, and young Finan had a sister. That was good, that was very good. Her desire for Finan would pass, if she tried hard enough, Osrith resolved in her mind. Too many people would have their lives ruined otherwise, but she did owe him a meeting, Osrith thought. He deserved to see his son. Mater. From the bed, Osrith saw young Finan's eyes open. 7 years old he was now, Osrith thought. What was that saying from the Roman Church? Give me a boy until he is 7 and I will give you the man. Young Finan would indeed have many skills as a man if his 7-year-old self was a template for his future self. And though he was reluctant with sword work, he did not complain about doing it. Begaorn, Osrith cried, pulling her little one into her arms. He held the cuddle for a few seconds, then sat back in bed. Tonight, thought Osrith, I'm coming up from the armory back here. Her son could be the first one he saw when he woke up, and it was not as if she were a career soldier, a warrior for life earning silver to support her family. He was her family, as was Edra. Osrith had to do it in a different way for them. She had to let go of her anger that drove her will to pick up Buey. Perhaps Buey could be young Finan's sword, and she could put her warriorship behind her. Mater, repeated young Finan, is it breakfast time already? Time to be getting up and getting dressed, Osrith told him, and, as for breakfast, it is nearly lunchtime. I'm going to meet Constantine about a matter, and you, she emphasized, are going to meet me in the courtyard at midday and show me what you can do with a sword. I want to see Athair too, young Finan told her. Then, eat your breakfast first, and ask Sainid to bring you in. We can go to the courtyard afterwards, and yes, Osrith added, when young Finan pulled a face, you are going to show me your sword skills. You are going to a meeting at the wall? Osrith asked, when she was announced at the throne room and was admitted through the front doors. Constantine, who might have been expecting a good many things, did not expect this. Domnall told you, then, Constantine replied to her. And you wish to come? Osrith did wish to go, but she did not reply, for she did not wish to say so. She was a warrior, and yet, after her talk with Domnall, felt only relief at deciding that she was not going to leave young Finan behind again. If she were to go, he was going with her. Osrith, you did as I commanded, for nearly 6 months when you left to honor Alba by supporting Mercia in her hour of need. You brought me back warriors, good men on whom I have relied on these past years. You brought me back wealth. Any debt you think you owe me, for your keep, for Edra, for young Finan, is paid many times over. And you owe no debt to Mercia now. I have ensured the Lady of the Mersons knows this. This was a reasonable Constantine, a grown-up Constantine. These were words she would have expected from his father, King, and yet, he was grown. Osrith by her own reckoning put herself over 50 years, and Constantine was not much younger than she was. And Edra? Is the plan for her still to marry Anlaf? Constantine smiled a little, knowing she wasn't here about Edra. He is a rogue, Constantine told her, getting up from his throne. He had killed many good Gaels, many of my people Western Isles. Then why keep him with you? Osrith asked, shocked expediency. He serves a purpose, the purpose being union of Britons and Gales with the might of Norse to aid his purpose of driving Say away. Osrith took a few steps towards her king. Does the plan involve Sigtryggr? Keep the lands to the wall and let Sigtryggr have the rest? Because it was the only plan that made sense to Osrith. The land to the wall was Bibbenberg land, and Sigtryggr might well decide to help his father-in-law. But Utad was not the master of Bibbenberg, and Sigtryggr, as king, had to decide on things for the immediacy and not the future. Plus, he will have had alliances with other Norse in Ireland. Anlaf might just be the alliance Constantine needed. And he is smitten with Edra. That was it then, Osrith thought. Here was the words of a father that adored his adopted daughter. No man could have loved a daughter more than to wait for a suitable match that was mutually beneficial to both of those involved in it. Then let her marry Constantine, Osrith told her. We are her guardians, she has no family that we know of. I am glad you agree, Osrith. Constantine told her. We can pursue this when I return from Corbridge. My army and I will meet with Edward, Sigtryggr and Ethelfled. When do we leave? Osrith asked. The crucial question. You are not coming, Constantine told her. I need all my men with me, and I need someone reliable here. You will have your guard Dumnota will have Sainid. I am taking my army with me, Constantine told her. I need every warrior I can get without leaving my home without protection. He got to his feet and began to walk to the window. From there, the Forth could be seen and, on the far bank, Cully's monastery. The Sainid to see the strength of Alba. Then, he turned back to Osrith. His father manifest before Osrith. Intelligence from Eswi is that a Lord Ethelelm is coming north with boats and supplies, also his youngest daughter Elswith to marry someone. Perhaps a nobleman, a Norseman, from Northumbria. Why? Osrith wondered, aloud. What interest could Ethelelm have here? He is one of the richest men in Wessex. Ah, Constantine breathed. You know Ethelelm? Of course. I had forgotten this. I knew him once, Osrith said. His eldest daughter is Edward's wife, Queen of Wessex. And at once, she remembered this man, who was a malevolent presence for a lot of her time at the palace at Winchester. He is motivated by money, and is not used to any sort of discomfort, such as a boat journey. Without good reason, Constantine concluded, and a knowing smile crept to his lips. What do you suppose might be the reason, other than the marriage? Something to do with controlling Northumbria in some way, Osrith suggested. I agree, Constantine nodded. There is a truce between Northumbria and Wessex, just as there is a truce between Northumbria and Mercia. But Wessex did not give lives and men at Seaster and Eothwick to put Sigtryggr on the throne. He took some steps to Osrith. It is my belief that eventually, the West Saxons will break Sigtryg's truce and invade Northumbria. Holding Bibbenberg will be the key they need. That made perfect sense. Help you to take Bibbenberg, use it as a base. Because the next stop after Northumbria would be the land directly north. And suddenly, she did care about who held Bibbenberg. In Utad's hands, Alba was under direct threat. And that threat would come from, she suspected, not Ethelfled, who had a treaty with Constantine, but Wessex. And when Edward died, the next to take both kingdoms, the man who it made sense to be king over Wessex and Mercia was Aethelstan, and he had no anchors weighing him down such as truces and oaths. I want to come, Osrith told Constantine. I want to be there, to help. But you will stay, Constantine told her. You will stay and you will protect Dumnota. And that is my final word on the subject. And with that, Constantine, in his bronze circlet and Domhnall's dark blue cloak, swept from his throne room, leaving Osrith alone.